All right. I'm Joe Turner, and this is the City Manager Unfiltered podcast, a podcast for city managers and other public sector executives. It is the most influential local government podcast in America. And I'm really excited about this episode we're going to do today because when I set out to do the podcast, when I started talking on LinkedIn and going to bat for city managers, some of you guys who have been following me for a long time, you might recall that I had a shtick where it was the International Brotherhood of City Managers, and I was characterizing myself as Joey Hoffa and just having a little fun with it because obviously we had all these city managers who are being attacked and no one's coming to their aid, no one's coming to their defense, right? And so I wanted to do the podcast, and then I started the American Association of Municipal Executives because no one's out there advocating for these managers who are getting run through the ringer, right? Or getting dragged across the coals by some of these really hellacious situations. And one of the things that really troubles me about this profession is that we constantly have to fight with one or both hands tied behind our backs. We have to, gag ourselves. Oftentimes, even if we want to defend ourselves, our city attorneys are saying we can't say jack, or council members are saying we can't say jack, and it gets really frustrating. And so we have a really interesting story here today. We have a city manager by the name of Blaine Oborn. He's most recently served up at Oak Harbor, Washington, and he went through an experience that I'm not sure if others have experienced. I think others might have. It's a religious bigotry, and he is a member of the Latter-day Saints, colloquially referred to as the Mormon faith and what have you. And I think when it comes to Mormons and Latter-day Saints, it's almost like the last bastion of individuals who it's fair to discriminate against, it seems like, in this country. And we're going to unpack his story in a minute. But before I get to him and introduce him to the show, I want to do a quick announcement on my October tour through the South, Storming the South for the AAME. As I've said in previous episodes, I'm going to be in Virginia on October 7th in Front Royal for lunch. I'm going to be doing dinner in Lynchburg. Then I'm going to drive down and hit Augusta, Georgia on the 8th for lunch and dinner. I'm shooting out to Beaufort, South Carolina for dinner on the 9th and fishing with a buddy of mine on the 10th. And then I'm going to head on out to Charlotte on the 11th for a shindig where we're going to watch some Saturday college ball games and have lunch and have some fellowship there with some other city managers and aspiring city managers. On the 12th, I'm going to be going to church with Daniel Rosemont in the Charlotte area. Other folks, you guys are all invited if you want to attend. And I'm kicking around the idea of doing a outdoor hike on Monday the 13th somewhere in that greater Charlotte area, maybe out in Little Switzerland, up in the Boone, North Carolina area. I've been talking to some city managers about doing that. Some of you guys got Columbus Day off over there, and so we're looking at doing an outdoor hike of some sort. And then the rest of the trip is pretty much open from the 13th, 14th, and 15th. I'm going to try to end, I think, in the 15th up in Richmond, Virginia. But that is going to be the rough outline of my stop, my tour. It's being generously sponsored by City Detect and Clear Career Professionals. City Detect is the AI platform that helps you with your code enforcement. Helps you basically level up and scale up your code enforcement team by using AI technology to really streamline the process. And then Clear Career Professionals, as you guys know, Michael Bays, they are the public sector executive recruitment firm that a lot of people rave about because of their excellent treatment of the city manager candidates. So they've generously sponsored the tour. I'm really excited about it. And if you are going to be somewhere along that path that I just outlined, I'd like you to hit me up because I'd like to reach out and say hi to you, drop in for a one-on-one at your city hall if you can't make one of those lunches or dinners that we're going to have. All right. So the next announcements I'm going to do is that we have the AAME job board, right? jobs.aame.org. If you want to post your senior executive recruitment for free, costs you absolutely nothing, whether you're a recruiter or a city. It only costs you money if you want to put it in the weekly newsletter that I send out to over 10,000 subscribers. But it's absolutely free. Again, it's the only job board out there in the country that's exclusively for senior and executive level government jobs, right? Also, yesterday in the AME community, Jeff Bagenshoe, the Rochelle, Illinois city manager, he was the second city manager to participate in the Q&A session for the aspiring executives who are members of the AME. So if you are an aspiring member of the AME and you did not catch that, please go and check the replay out. Also, if you are not a member of the AME and you want to be a part of it, you're an aspiring executive and you want to check out this Q&A series, you want to join today, we're going to have another guest on RC Wise in October. I don't have the date right in front of me, so forgive me, but you will want to check that out. Also, if you are a city manager, an assistant city manager, and you have not joined the AME, please make sure that you check it out if you're interested in joining the group. All right. all the announcements are out of the way, and I'm really excited to get into this topic. With me today is Blaine Oborn. Like I said, he is the former city administrator in Oak Harbor, Washington. He's got nearly 20 years of experience in the executive chair, and he was separated from his employer in 2024, early 2024, so about a year and a half or so ago. And he's had a hell of a time trying to get back into the mix because he's been getting smeared left and right by a former employee and also the local newspaper who's written some pretty nasty stories about him. So we're going to bring on Blaine to clear the air, to go to bat for himself, and we're going to go and unpack the story. So Blaine, before we get into all the details of that, why don't we give a brief little introduction to you and your background?
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate being here. Once again, it's Blaine Oborn. My pleasure to be here. As you said, I have 20 years of experience in the field in Washington for 6 years, 9 years in Wisconsin, and then 4 years in West Virginia. I'm a native Californian and just really love this field. And before that, I worked in the state government and the federal government. So just a lot of experience. I have a master's degree and a bachelor's degree in accounting and a master's in public policy and administration. And so just somebody that's I feel that I'm very qualified and extremely qualified. And unfortunately, because of religious bigotry, I'm facing some challenges here. And I appreciate your going to bat for me and helping and giving a tool for me to advocate and counter the bad press and the difficult, toxic employees that I had to work with.
Absolutely. I'm hoping that by doing this interview, Blaine, that future councils who might be considering you as a finalist or recruiters, that they can listen to your story and get a little bit more context and nuance to what's going on. Because so often we as candidates, all we have out there is what is being put out there by oftentimes critics of ours, right? Whether it's social media, whether it's the local newspaper, whether it's some elected officials who've written some op-ed pieces, things of that sort of nature. And it's very rare that the candidates themselves get a chance in a long form format such as this to articulate all the details surrounding their departure from that last job, right?
Yes, very correct. And unfortunately, like you mentioned earlier, I mean, I was under a gag for a lot of the time, so I wasn't even allowed to defend myself from accusations that were mounted to religious bigotry. As you mentioned, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm a fourth generation. My parents were members, my grandparents were members, my great grandparents were members. So long history from Utah, and I've always been private about my religion, and unfortunately, given the accusations against me, the inflammatory false allegations against me, that they're based upon my religion, and so unfortunately, I've had to be public about my religion, unfortunately, and tell people because when people hear that I'm being accused falsely because of my religion, the first question they ask me is, "Well, what religion are
Yeah,
you?" And
it's a catch 22,
so
right? Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
good 22. And it's interesting because I had a recruiter that, he said, well, I know, 30, 30 great Latter-day Saints that are in this field that are men like you. And certainly they're not religious bigots like you're being accused of because of your religion. And so, and that's the term I didn't start using until real recently because I just really had to pick up the game. I've been trying to take the soft approach and just publicly just continue to apply for jobs and hopefully people will see through it. But unfortunately, 20 months later, I'm still looking and I need to get my voice out there. And unfortunately, toxic people, when they can't control you, they want to control how people view you. And so
Absolutely.
that's somebody's quote. And then the other issue, like you said, if you don't tell your side of the story, other people are going to tell it for you. And from my experience, they're not going to tell the truth.
Yeah, that's just human nature, right? We have even when we have people who support us, it's like when you go to a restaurant the people who leave reviews are the ones who generally have a bad experience or they're pissed off about something. The people who are happy, they just go on about their business, right? And it's kind of the same with us. I mean, and I guess this is a moment in time for me to kind of remind everyone out there, like, hey, we need to go to bat for those that are we're allies that we're that are friends and our colleagues that we want to support because by golly we all know that when we have our critics they have unlimited energy and stamina when it comes to trying to ruin our reputation. And at the end of the day, Blaine, and I've said this time and time again, our reputation is our currency. That's what we trade in, and if it gets damaged and it loses its value, then we lose our value, and it becomes very difficult for us to provide for our families and what have you. So before we get into the nitty gritty of the details of your case, I'm really curious about something, because I'm a SoCal native, a California native, and I meant to ask you about this in our pre-interview call, but I forgot. And what prompted you to leave the state of California, the Golden State, to go and pursue your occupation elsewhere?
You know, my house was probably at the top of its value,
What
and
year
I
was
could have
this?
moved somewhere else. And so I moved in 2005, and
There
I
you
just
go.
thought, well,
Yeah.
this is a good time to beat the rush out of California, and went to West Virginia, and just I wanted a different experience, and was a native, and I wanted to live in other states, and so in this field you can do that, and so it's just really been, I think it's been good for my family and I to have lived in California, have lived in West Virginia, and then Virginia and some of the time, and then also in Wisconsin, and then Washington State. And just the country's really beautiful. A lot of people ask my wife, and I'm allowed to plagiarize her. Ask her, well, what's your favorite place you live? And she always says, well, where we live now. So I think that's a great answer. And wherever I'm hired, that's going to be my favorite place to live. So
Well put, well said. Yeah, absolutely. Well, you left in a good time, right? I mean, we had the massive crash in 2008 when real estate just fell to the ground, and prices got hammered. So you picked a good time to cash out that equity. So, Blaine, let's turn our attention now to your most recent stint in Washington, Oak Harbor, because, like I said, you have about 20 years of city manager experience. And up to this point, up to your arrival in Oak Harbor, correct me if I'm wrong, you have an unblemished history. You had no terminations. You've always been in pretty good standing with your governing bodies. You've had a very successful career. Is that correct?
that is correct.
All right. So then you get to Oak Harbor and things start going off the rails pretty quickly. And, I'm going to set the table a little bit, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because in our pre interview screening, you kind of told me that you walked into a hornet's nest, right? The city of Oak Harbor was going through a sewer project that had ballooned out of control from an initial budget of about $50 million to a whopping $150 million or so. And I assume your public works director was overseeing that project at the time, right?
Yes, she was. It was Cathy Rosen, and she was the public works director. And there was already friction between her and the mayor before I was even hired, and that was part of the reason why I was hired.
Yeah, because the mayor is pretty pissed off, I'm sure, and I'm sure others were too, that the expense of this project had tripled, right? I mean, you don't, I mean, a lot of cities don't just have $100 million lying around, just waiting to be spent because a project got tripled, right?
No, and it really led to one of the highest sewer rates in the community, and it was just really a disservice to the citizens we represent. And so it was just a bad story. And you've talked about it in the field here, and looking at construction projects and how they can go south. And this is just a textbook example. They use the GCCM process, the general contractor contract manager process, and they were building the plant before they even had it fully designed. So how
Okay.
can you contain cost if you don't even have it fully designed? Then they did 13 phases, and so I'm just an expert on what went wrong. And you and I could have a long discussion on that, but that's not where the damage is. The damage is because it went wrong. A toxic
Well,
employee that
yeah.
I control me tried to control my reputation, and disparage my reputation.
Well, this is one of the classic fears or issues that we as city managers face in our roles, is because when you come into a situation and you have an incompetent department head who has basically screwed the pooch and allowed a project to triple, and they are now under the gun of possibly being fired or let go, right? Because of that, they're going to scratch and claw and do whatever they can to protect themselves and their livelihood, whether that means throwing you under the bus or another person under the bus, or whatever the case might be, right? Because very few people are going to want to take responsibility and own that, because they are concerned that they're going to lose their job. It's very simple.
Well put.
And so you come into this environment now. So this is around January of 2018. This thing's kind of blown up out of control, and then apparently your predecessor gets fired a couple months later, because again, the buck stops with the city administrator or the city manager, and as all things happen in these organizations, and so he's shown the door, and you come aboard. Now, get this. You come aboard in August, right? And my understanding is that a couple weeks after you start, around that time, your public works director has filed a lawsuit with the city, right? Against the city.
It was first started with a demand letter. So I
Okay.
had only been there 2 weeks, and she files a demand letter asking for $1.25 million. Otherwise, she's going to go to the press and drag everybody into this.
And what was her claim? What was the grievance? Where how had she been wronged?
She claimed that the mayor embarrassed her because he publicly came out with a press release when he was pretty pissed in January of 2018 of this ballooning. And I did the audit, and they basically kept the increase secret for him for the first 2 years of his term. So he was pretty ticked off about that and how it was out of control.
I bet he was.
And he was trying to hold her accountable, and she decided to go the legal bout and do the lawsuit to deflect from her accountability.
One, it's also just to buy time, right? To delay, stall, buy time, and protect yourself from being held accountable. I mean,
Yep.
this idea that you can have a project triple and you somehow just are not going to be held accountable is just mind-boggling to me. So you also have I probably should introduce another name. You have the city engineer Joel Stoll, who he left actually before you actually came aboard, correct?
That is correct, and that's one of the issues with the newspaper. They tend to leave that fact out.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're getting there at the very tail end of all this, and you have to clean up this mess, plus do all the other aspects of your job. And I'm going to do a little spoiler. So, both, if my understanding is correct of the background here, the context, both Cathy Rosen, your former public works director, and the engineer had filed lawsuits related to this whole fiasco. Correct?
Yes, they filed lawsuits in 2020. About two years later, they finally filed the lawsuit, and unfortunately, that's when she used the opportunity to accuse me based upon my religion. And quote from her lawsuit, she says, "Oborn has religious and/or moral belief that women should be submissive to men."
What is she basing this on?
My religion, as you mentioned, I have a clean record. There's nothing in my actions that would imply. There's been multiple investigations by the insurance company representing the city to make sure there was no issues with that, and there was never anything in the lawsuit to do that. Unfortunately, the news editor, Jessie Denslin, she had an issue with me because I didn't hire her for a previous position I had, a PIO position. And so when the lawsuit came out, she decided to embellish it, and she decided to add sexist and misogynist there and accuse me of that. And the mayor asked her a year later what the basis was, and all she could say is, "Well, I just know he is, just because. I just know he's a
This is
sexist."
incredible. This is incredible. Okay, so let me rewind, unpack this. Okay, so the public works director has filed a demand letter or submitted a demand letter 2 weeks after 2 weeks after you were hired, because she's trying to cover her ass related to this ballooning project and claiming that she's being, attacked by the mayor unfairly, which is just absolutely ridiculous. Okay, talk about victim mentality. That's one. Two, you have never, ever in the history of your career been attacked or criticized because of your faith or accused of treating people unfairly or discriminating against them because of your faith. Is that correct?
I have never been. And as I mentioned earlier, I always keep my faith private
Yep.
and based upon my actions. And so there never was any actions throughout my career before that, after that, that would substantiate me being labeled as a sexist.
And has there ever been any complaint filed by any woman against you for anything related to the workplace?
Absolutely not.
It's just so you have this woman who you don't even know, and not that she made that claim 2 weeks after you're hired. I don't want to conflate the timeline here, but later on she inserts this whole allegation about your religion, and then you have the newspaper editor or publisher, Jessie Stenslin, who writes these horrible articles after you after she applied for a PIO position but didn't get it, and then she's attacking you for being a sexist and a misogynist because I guess because Cathy Rosen said something in a document and that's it. And Cathy Rosen technically didn't even call you a misogynist, did she?
No, she never called me a sexist or a misogynist. She just said I couldn't get along. I could only get along with submissive women. So it was drastically embellished.
Oh man, talk about getting totally hosed. Okay. All right. So walk me through now, like we're going through the process of you coming on board 2 weeks after you get on there. She files this demand letter. Was there any discussion or conversation about putting her on leave or getting rid of her at that point in time because of her ineptitude and the project just ballooning? Like what made you decide to, I guess, keep her aboard at that point in time?
Well,
Or let
she
me
filed a
actually let me circle back on this because you're technically a city administrator in Oak Harbor, and I don't know how it works in Oak Harbor. Did you have hire and fire authority as the city administrator, or was that in the mayor's domain?
It's in the mayor's domain. Washington's a little bit differently. In other states, the city administrator is quite similar to the city manager,
Right.
where you serve at the will and pleasure of the council. Under Washington law, I served at will and pleasure of the mayor. So, when you serve will and pleasure of the mayor, you ask the mayor's permission before you do anything. So,
Okay.
technically, the people are appointed at the mayor's and confirmed, and they can be fired by the mayor. So I have to have the mayor's approval to do that. And Rosen had to defend herself earlier, had because there was a previous mayor to the mayor I worked with that fired a whole bunch of department heads, and she had herself classified as a for cause employee, so we couldn't even fire her at will.
What do you mean? How did she get herself classified as a for cause employee? Walk me through that.
She went to an attorney, and the attorney lobbied the council to pass an ordinance to make the public works director, the current public works director, an at-will employee. And then after that, it reverts back to an at-will, which is the classic status of department heads and city managers and city administrators.
Well, dude, I mean, I gotta give her credit for that. As inept as she was in running her department, she seemed to be really confident in hiring some legal counsel. I mean, wow. I mean, so she got a special carve out just for her position in the entire organization.
Oh yeah, she did. She had a long history of attacking city administrators, and I was just the last in her line of many. So unfortunately, that yeah, she had a history of being a cantankerous employee and doing a lot of toxic and bad things. A union was created just for her because she was attacking the employees, and so they had to unionize to
No
defend
kidding.
themselves against
Wow.
her. So just a lot of other things that were just really, when there's smoke, there's fire, and there was a lot of fire burning. So,
Oh my goodness. Okay. So as we said earlier, you get hired on in August, and then 2 weeks later, she sends this demand letter asking for $1.25 million in damages. I guess. Just
yes, or she would go to the press.
well, apparently she had an ally in the press, so I guess that I guess those were some fighting words, right? When you think about it. I
Yeah,
mean,
and yeah, then she files a tort claim because in Washington State, before you can file a lawsuit, you have to file a tort claim, and 2 months before you file a lawsuit. So in October 2018, then she turns around and files a formal lawsuit, a big old long one, and she accused me of being directed by the mayor to fire her, which is false, and just a lot of other things. And it was really depressing reading her comments and her false allegations. And that's really where I think I made the mistake. I mean, I was advised to leave her leave her as an employee and continue to work with her, which was really difficult and just really draining
yeah,
to do that, to continue to work with it. And so rather than placing her on paid administrative leave in in September was when she filed the tort claim in 2018. People have asked me, what would you do differently? I would have placed her on paid administrative leave then, and then my reputation probably wouldn't have been damaged here,
right.
and protect myself, because it's just, that's where the issue is there's the organization's best interest, and then there's the employee's best interest. And unfortunately, with this lawsuit and with the reputation damage against me, they were separate. I
Yeah,
mean, the organization, the insurance pool looked out for them, and they gagged me and didn't let me defend myself and didn't defend me adequately. And they did a response, and 2 months later, after Rosen's claim, or actually the next month. And she did the lawsuit in October, and November they came out and cited her allegations as false, her claims as inflammatory false allegations designed to generate press. And unfortunately, the biased editor Jesse Stensland, she never did an article and did a rebuttal and did this and told the city side of the story. And so my problem is that city defended me and said when they said at that time said when the lawsuit was settled in 2023 that they were always inflammatory allegations, but unfortunately the press, the local paper editor, she suppressed that information and just focused on the sexist issue and focused on attacking me, unfortunately.
That's got to be so frustrating, Blaine. So I'm not sure I was following you on this. Who cleared you, or who did the investigation? Was this done internally by the organization? Did they hire an outside attorney? Was this done by the law firm that the insurance company hired? Or walk me through how you are vindicated in that regard.
The insurance company did a hired an attorney, and so we had an attorney representing us on the lawsuit.
Okay.
And as part of the lawsuit, they wanted to make sure that there was no allegations substantiated. So they did their own internal investigation, and they were prepared to take that to court if
Right.
they had it to defend that. And unfortunately, they settled the lawsuit, and so I never got my day in court.
This is what pisses me off so much, Blaine, because when these insurance companies, they have carte blanche to settle however they want to do up to the limit, right? Essentially, because they're saying, hey, you have a policy limit up to this amount where your deductible or whatever the case is, and they can settle without the support of the council. If the council says, hey, we want to fight it. We think this employee is toxic, incompetent, inept, and basically full of shit. We don't want to, we want to fight. We don't want to pay. They're going to say, no, we don't care what you want to do. We're going to pay out this individual some money to make them go away because it's cheaper for us to pay that person out than to take it to court and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars fighting it. And then you obviously never know what the risk is going to be with a jury, right?
Yes, you never know. But they did their deposition, and she attacked the mayor, she attacked me. The mayor was ill, and she bragged about how she should feel bad that the mayor was ill and had issues. And then she admitted that she collaborated with council members, unfortunately, and that's the other politics that fits into this, and why other things happened with the vote of no confidence. And they were all politics and part of the whole attack from Rosen and council members, and ultimately even the city attorney unfortunately joined her bandwagon, and that's how toxic and how difficult. And he's trying to sell his firm to an employee, former employee of the city that was friends with Rosen, and the mayor and I had
Wait,
no
wait.
intent to
Hold on. Hold on. You're covering a lot of ground there, Blaine. Okay. I can't believe this. Okay. We're going to come back to that in a second. I want to unpack the investigation a little bit more.
Okay,
Were the
okay.
findings of this investigation conducted by the attorney hired by the insurance company, was that ever a public document, or were you ever given a copy? Were you ever able to see that yourself? Because oftentimes you as a city manager, it's kept from you. And I was wondering if you ever got a chance to see the finality of that report.
I never did.
Of course, I hate that.
I was never given the tool. I have a public records request in to try to get that. Whether they'll give it to me or not is an issue because, I mean, even Rosen, I mean, in a June city of Sunnyside, Rosen comes out of nowhere and calls up council members and campaigns against me for an interim position at the city of
Well,
Sunnyside, Washington, that I'm
you saw
considered
what's
for.
happened.
So, I
You saw
mean,
what happened to Mike Gonzalez over there. She might have actually done you a favor in that
she,
case. I mean, to be honest,
she,
you
might,
might
she,
want to send her
might,
a thank you
she,
card.
yeah. Well, the
Sunnyside's
guy
an
they
absolute shit
hired,
show.
the guy they hired was fired before because he slept with an employee, something I have never done. So that's ironic
Sunnyside's been in the news quite a bit. Oh boy. Oh boy.
yeah, yeah.
So Blaine, okay. So when you say that the investigation cleared you, what do you have to base that on? Is that basically based off of what your mayor maybe told you? I assume this was communicated. Was this communicated to you in a closed session? Was this communicated to the governing body? How did you know that you were essentially cleared by that investigation if you don't have the document to cite as proof?
During the time that the lawsuit was going on and Rosen was there. I might as well tell you, I met with an attorney every 2 weeks. And sooner, when Rosen flared up and did some areas, because she was attacking me, the staff, and the whole time, and trying to justify her lawsuit the whole time she stayed on board of the city while she had this lawsuit going on. So it was, and she was an extremely cantankerous person, and she had allies. Unfortunately, people that didn't want to be bullied by her, so they became, and she was controlled by them. And so it was a cantankerous relationship, a cantankerous environment that was going on during this time.
And so when she was going through these depositions, outside of her just, bumping her gums and making these vicious allegations and smearing you because of your faith, she provided not one text message, not one email, not one witness to corroborate anything that she was saying regarding your supposed discrimination of her because of your religion, correct?
That is correct. The issue is there never was anything to investigate. When she made the allegations in the lawsuit, there was nothing specific for anybody to investigate, so they didn't investigate it. But just to cover themselves, the insurance company representing the insurance pool in the lawsuit, they did their own investigation just to reaffirm it, but they never provided that. They told me, because I was meeting with that individual on a regular basis that conducted it, but they never provided any information. They did provide a press release at the end in 2023 when the lawsuit was finally settled, and it said on there that Oborn and the mayor always claimed they're innocent and never did anything, and nothing was substantiated. So they did reaffirm it there that there never was any basis for that. Unfortunately, that never was really covered adequately in the paper,
Right.
and the biased news editor just continued to hammer on the sexist issue and my alleged treatment of women and the other issues that happened as part of this, because it unfortunately not only was I accused, I had a vote of no confidence that was politically motivated, and I had an attorney that left that was politically motivated, and I had a survey that was done against legal advice to try to attack me, and they were all from Rosen and other council members and people that were supporters of her that wanted to bash the mayor and I and the HR director.
So basically, and I'm gonna kind of backtrack because you told me in a pre-interview call about this survey. Basically, what he's alluding to is that Cathy Rosen, the public works director we're talking about here, in her vicious smear campaign, went through back channels, circumvented the chain of command, and with the support of some of the council members who were on opposing sides of the mayor. I guess she went and did a quote unquote employee morale survey to sort of stack the deck against Mr. Oborn here and try to paint him as this leader that had, the staff didn't respect or didn't appreciate and didn't want to work for. Correct?
Yeah, let me clarify that. You're about 90% correct.
Good. Okay.
She collaborated with them, but those two council members, Council Member Mayor Pro Tem Munns and Council Member Servadius, they were collaborating with her. They denied it falsely, but I mean, absolutely, Rosen even admits it in her deposition that she was working with them and that she had the idea of doing the survey. She proposed the idea in 2020, and then when I had the vote of no confidence, then she proposed it again to those council members. And then at that time, the mayor succumbed to it and went ahead and did a survey there. The survey bashed a lot of the council members who were attacking the staff, and there was a lot of friction going on there, unfortunately. And that was documented in the survey. But there was employees, including Rosen and other employees, that were under performance reviews and under disciplinary actions that were put in their anonymous survey, and the attorneys just said you can't do that. You can't do anonymous surveys because there's no way of the validity. What if they say something really outlandishly false, and you can't, there's no accountability when you have an anonymous survey, and that's something that really should never be done.
Yeah.
I'm certainly, you can do confidential surveys and stuff, but you can't just have people that just can write anything they want. And unfortunately, the biased editor of the paper, she tries to treat it as it's
The
a
gospel.
sample survey,
Yeah.
and it's scientific, and it's a scientific. It's not. It just was a quagmire mess of things on there, and a few employees, but I have no way of substantiating, countering the false claims in that survey, and that's
Yeah.
what's so
I hate
because I don't
anonymous.
even
I
th-
hate anonymous
yeah,
complaints. And
yeah.
I got and I'm not going to go on a rant here against the ICMA, but I was a victim of an anonymous complaint when I applied to be a member of the state chapter of the ICMA, because the ICMA allows individuals to make anonymous complaints and you can't defend yourself, and it's completely ridiculous. It's un-American. It's just nothing fair about it, and it gives bad actors like Cathy Rosen the opportunity to defame and besmirch good people. Have you thought about in any way going after Jesse Stensland and the Bias Sound newspaper for defamation in some way, or taking them to court in some respect?
I have. I mean, there's a lot of free speech, unfortunately, there, but I think there was a lot of malicious arguments, and that's something I'm certainly looking about. But I've struggled to have attorneys, that can bring on and take action, and I'm on my third attorney with this issue, and I'm hoping the third time's a charm here
Yeah,
in representing me. And really, I have always just been about restoring my reputation and continuing in the career. I've
yeah,
never been about attacking people, attacking Rosen. I really don't want to attack Stensland. I really don't want to attack Rosen. I want to attack.
I
It's not
do.
my DNA.
I do. I'll tell you that I do. They sound like scumbags to me, but that's why I'm here. I mean, that's
They
my
are.
role.
Thank you,
I mean,
thank you. But I want to continue in this career, and unfortunately, I have to attack them in order to defend myself.
well, man, there's so much I want to unload on right now, but I will say this. It should be noted that the insurance company settled with Cathy Rosen for a whopping $200,000, right? Which was a really a low number. That's a basically see you next Tuesday number. We don't want to deal with you anymore, and that's not in any way a vindication of her claims or a corroboration of her claims and allegations. And I will say this one more time, and I'll probably say it a couple more times before this podcast is over. We are talking with a gentleman who has never been attacked or criticized or had any allegations or accusations leveled against him any way whatsoever by a female employee, whether it was for sexism or religious discrimination or anything like that. So it's really disgusting and despicable to see how people can do this and get away with it. And it really pisses me off. Um, yeah. Uh, so I'm sorry. A little rant there. It just annoys the hell out of me. So the interesting thing about this, Blaine, is that you were there for a while longer, and then you separated with the organization. There was, I think, a council election and a changing of the guard, and you were sort of, I think, pushed out. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say. With the new mayor came on board in January of 2024, and then he ended up firing me in without cause in February the next month.
And we're not making any suggestions or allegations that was necessarily that you're pushed out because of the religious discrimination, and the part of Cathy Rosen. But I do think it's probably fair to say that her years of tainting you and the paper tainting you didn't help your cause one bit when a new council's coming in and they're trying to think about making a change. Correct?
That is correct. And unfortunately, a newspaper tried to summarize everything, and they said I was fired because of the vote of no confidence, because of the lawsuit, and because of the morale issues. And those all happened 3 to 4 years before that. And so they had nothing to do with it. I was fired because a new mayor wants to go in a new direction. And he certainly has the ability to do that. We all know the risk of that. And like I said, in Washington State, I served at the will and pleasure of the mayor, and the mayor had the opportunity to do that. My problem with the mayor is that he didn't make it an amicable separation. He violated my contract. He didn't adhere to my 3 month get to know you clause and let me go a month and a half in instead of giving me 3 months, and that was in my contract. So he violated my contract
When you
there.
say when for the audience, I've never used that get to know you language. We use it as a cooling off period, or we talk about the elections clause. What he's referring to, ladies and gentlemen, is that he had a clause in his contract that said following an election cycle that he would give a 3 month grace period with the new council before they could make a decision to terminate. Correct?
Yeah, new council and new mayor.
And they
Yes.
violated that, and then they've also withheld your severance for several months. Correct?
Yes, they held that. And then also, like I mentioned, it was supposed to be an amicable separation as proposed in my contract. When the reference letter, I'm supposed to allow me to do that. And I think I should have been allowed to be part of the press release that went out, and he did not allow me to do that and be part of that process. And on I certainly I'm a professional, and I wanted to make it an amicable separation, and he refused to do so.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about this religious bigotry and how it's been weaponized against you, because you have this interesting timeline where you come aboard, you have this friction with Cathy Rosen, which really just throws you get thrown into the mix because she's trying to save her bacon because she's inept and she screwed the pooch when it came to this project. So you become a victim of her incompetence. And then as time moves forward, she eventually leaves. She gets separated from the organization. Why don't you walk us through how that separation happened so we can kind of close the book and explain why you're still dealing with the consequences of this today?
So in January 2021, an employee comes to us and tells us that Rosen's bragging about how she's going to extort millions of dollars in her lawsuit from the city. And so we placed her on paid administrative leave finally,
Okay.
after working with her for a long time, since 2018 to 2021, and placed her on paid and started an investigation. The investigation left, and we decided to give her the opportunity to come back on board, and she decided to leave the city based upon disability at that time in 2021. But she continued to work on the lawsuit, continued collaborating with council members, and continued to attack me issue. And then also I had a audit going on at that same time of the clean water facility, the sewer treatment plant that was way over budget. Like I said, they used this GCCM process instead of the classic design, bid, and build project. And they did, instead of doing 3 or 4 phases, they did 13 phases for the
Right.
project, which really made it difficult to control. And then they moved the money around between the savings in one, the contingency in one phase to the other one without going to the council. And so I was attempting to claw back. Here I am getting attacked with the vote of no confidence from the council and with the attorney. At the same time, I'm conducting a audit and trying to claw back money with the construction company and trying to we originally were looking about clawing back about 5 million. It got it down to about $2 million. And then I was really disappointed when I went to the council in closed session, and they said, "Oh, we'll just take the construction company wanted to settle for 120,000."
What a
The
joke.
council took that. The council took that, and in executive session, one of the council members mentions that we don't want the public to know how we screwed up this project, and we don't want the truth to be known. And so that's why they settled instead of clawing back 2 million like I wanted. And I think we probably could have got it down to 1 million, and that would have been money we could have passed on savings to the public and to the
Yeah,
ratepayers and to help
absolutely.
them. Because unfortunately, we have one of the high Oak Harbor has one of the highest sewer treatment costs in the country. And I verified that because I was negotiating with the Navy on because there's a Navy base and negotiating, and they said that when they did their analysis when they were deciding to hook up with us and become part of our sewer treatment plant, they said that you had the highest one of the highest sewer treatment plant costs, and that was because this project should have
Yeah.
cost 50 million and ended up costing 150 million.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Kathy. Appreciate
Yeah.
you screwing the ratepayers with your incompetence, and then obviously going after Blaine here and screwing him over. So let's get over to more about how she screwed you over. So you part ways with the organization in early 2024, and then you have this woman who's now retired, collecting her pension. I would imagine she's got a disability apparently, but not it doesn't prevent her from running her mouth and bumping her gums and typing on the keyboard because she's going out and screwing you over on these recruitments that you're participating in, right? When you're trying to get a new line of work. Walk us through what she's been doing to you in your post separation phase of your career here.
Yeah, interesting enough, the former city that replaced Stowell, one of them that replaced him was Jim Bridges, and Jim Bridges was from Sunnyside in Eastern Washington. He commuted the whole time he worked for us about 2 years, and after Rosen left, he kind of saw the writing on the issue, and he had some major performance issues and that I had with him, and so he left on his own record. And but then he comes along and gets wind that I'm going to come on board as the interim city manager, and he calls up the council and even calls up Rosen and has Rosen call the council and just says all these lies about me. And so the council backed away from hiring me as the interim and then hired him instead, even though he had already been previously fired from the city twice and had slept with an employee and was disciplined for that. And so things that I have never done before in my whole career, and always been above board and and ethical and moral, and so unfortunately, they hired him instead.
Wait, so who slept with the employee?
Jim Bridges.
Who's Jim Bridges?
Jim Bridges is the engineer that was fired from Sunnyside previously twice, and then
Uh-huh.
worked for the city during my time there. And
At
then
at
when I
Oak
was
Harbor.
being at Oak Harbor, then when I was being considered for the interim city manager position, he called up and had Rosen call up and campaigned against me, and then got himself self hired instead of me
So Jim Bridges got hired as the interim in Sunnyside?
as the interim in June of this year. And he continues, and he's in that role today. And he wasn't competent
I didn't
as a
realize that
city
he's the one that
engineer.
replaced Mike Gonzalez because Mike Gonzalez has been on
Hmm.
leave. Well, he just got fired. Stuff, that his situation. So I didn't realize that there was a connection to you and that I didn't realize there was that connection. Wow.
Yeah, and I purely was going to follow the code of ethics, and I wasn't going to campaign for the position because somebody was in it, and certainly prepared to be ethical on that issue. And unfortunately, sometimes the unethical people are who win in this field.
So Blaine, why don't you walk me through the other recruitments you've gone through and what impact you feel like this whole episode's had on you in those searches?
Well, unfortunately, if you Google me, and the AI is going to tell you they're going to quote the misinformation from the newspaper, and they don't have the enough information, and there hasn't been enough counter to it to say there's two sides to the story, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, and so it appears to some people, and so I was going to be hired in the port of South Whidbey, which is on Whidbey Island. Unfortunately, the same newspaper that wrote all the bad things, they said I was going to be hired when I had never was offered the position and falsely said I was going to be hired. They rallied up some employees, misinformed employees there, and supposedly somebody who worked for that was on the anti-discrimination committee with the city of Langley and was an expert in countering discrimination, really just discriminated against me because of and committed religious bigotry along with Rosen and Stensland, and they showed up unexpectedly to us to a board meeting of the Port of South Whidbey, said all kinds of things that were totally false against me, and chastised the council for even considering me, or the board for even considering hire me. So they chose not to hire me. And one of the things that one of the commissioners said, Blaine, if you do a better job of getting the news out there and countering this false information, then maybe we'll hire you. And so they left the position open interim for a while there, but unfortunately they got somebody who came on board, and so there was a chance of me getting back, but unfortunately,
That window
they've got
closed,
an
right?
employee that
Yeah.
the window closed, unfortunately, and so I was campaigning, and I did a podcast, did other things, and doing this podcast, and so that really made me decide to just step up my game and really tell my side of the story
I love it.
and really get out there. And so I'm a quiet person, and but I like, but I can't be. I have
It's
to
desperate
get out
measures, right?
there and
It's desperate measures. When you're
yes,
dealing with some loser who drives a Prius and has a coexist sticker on the back of the car, but yet they can't stand someone who's a member of the Latter Day Saints. You know how that rolls. It's a complete double
yeah, and
standard.
interesting enough, religious discrimination is supposed to be against the law, but unfortunately, I'm just giving you a case where apparently people are getting away with it.
Well, it's open season. I mean, not only just on Latter Day Saints, but even just Judeo-Christian faith. It's if you're Muslim, you're good. If you're Muslim, you're good. But if you are Judeo-Christian, then obviously, and you're a white guy, oh, watch out, watch out. That's my editorializing, not Blaine's. But I'm a that I've been on this earth long enough to see it. So, yeah, that's pretty wild. I have a question for you, Blaine. So what's the story with Utah? Like, why not just go to Utah and find a job there? There's plenty of Mormons there. Obviously, you're not going to be discriminated because of your faith in that environment with all the different opportunities there. Have you thought about trying to go to Utah and pursue work, or are you really just trying to stay in Washington because you like the area? Like, walk me through the thought process.
I have applied. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of opportunities in Utah. They do a lot of promoting within,
Uh-huh.
and unfortunately, I haven't done a good enough job in telling that I'm suffering from religious bigotry. I mean, so I need to tell my story better, and maybe I'll get some sympathy from people who understand that in communities that are faith-based and realize that just because of my religion, that I'm not a sexist, that it has to be based upon specific issues. And, I just listened to somebody's talk about labeling, and labeling is really dangerous.
It
I
is.
mean, yeah, I mean, you think about the Holocaust, they labeled the Jews. And so labeling's that, so where does this stop?
I'm gonna editorialize one more time, and I'm not asking you to co-sign or say anything, Blaine, because this is me and the city manager unfiltered. But we saw it with Charlie Kirk. When you have a bunch of woke liberals who are labeling anybody who's conservative as being a fascist or Hitler, and that words equal violence, it's no mystery that you start having people attacking conservatives because of their belief system, and even going to the point of assassinating them. I mean, things have gotten out of control. Again, I'm editorializing. I'm not asking you to co-sign that. I'm trying to help you get a job, not hurt you on your job search there. So I'll leave it at that, right? I can say things that other people can't. But at the end of the day, Blaine, I think it's an absolute tragedy what's happened to you. I think this happens more often than a lot of people are aware of. And I guess my counsel and advice to all the executives listening is, when you're dealing with a toxic a-hole and you have somebody in your organization that you need to get rid of, it's a lot of people want to vacillate, or they want to try to look for a way to to maybe look the other way, or not have that difficult conversation, or not go down the road of termination. But I got to tell you, man, I think 9 times out of 10, it's much better to fire somebody and put them on the defensive and make them have to fight the battle against you, than leaving that toxic person in the environment who can then sabotage you, either with your staff or with other elected officials. And I've seen that multiple times, countless times, across the country, as I do my news scans and I talk to city managers who will not come on the record, not come on the show and be on the record, because obviously most city managers are risk averse and they want to avoid the limelight or scrutiny, and they don't want to talk about their situations unless it's on background. And Blaine, you were kind of taking that tack too, but you've kind of come to the point in the road where it's like, man, I got to do something different. I'm not getting these jobs. I should be getting these jobs. When you have a 20-year history of this line of work, and in this environment, Blaine, right now, where you have so many baby boomers who are retiring, and you have so few executives who are coming up through the ranks because they're pursuing nonprofit jobs or state and federal jobs, and the city manager ranks are pretty thin. There's really no reason for you to be going unemployed right now, unless it's the religious bigotry and the bad press that's been hurting you. And I'm hoping that we can clean up that record for you a little bit, set the record straight, and let other people hear your side of the story.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I won't back some of your other comments, but I'll back the comment here is, the lesson learned here is, I should have terminated or put her on paid administrative leave a lot earlier, and dealt with that issue that way, rather than putting myself through the ringer and putting the risk out there. And, other lessons learned, as we talked about, is that, your employers and the insurance companies, they don't always have your best interest. And so one of the things I appreciate you for applauding is making and it's getting the city managers and advocating them, and getting us to understand that we need to represent ourselves, put our story out there, and we need to protect ourselves and defend ourselves.
Absolutely, 100%. Hey, Blaine, it's been great having you on the show. My reminder, my parting word is to all the executives listening: is don't be afraid to cut out the cancer. It's been a pleasure having Blaine on the show to talk about his situation. I think there's a lot of religious discrimination and bigotry out there that is really going under the radar, and it's not really being talked about. And I'm hoping that this conversation will help others maybe be a little bit more open about their situation. And if you feel like you've been a victim of discrimination, you feel like you need to rehabilitate your image, you feel like you need to set the record straight because something's harming you in your job search, don't be afraid to reach out and talk to me, and we can see if we can do an interview and get you on the program. At the end of the day, you can only sit on your hands for so long and not speak the truth and not clear the air, right? So if you don't speak up and stand up for yourself, who is? Obviously, I'd love to stand up for you and do the best I can, but I'm just one person with one podcast and one organization. So anyway, if you like the content, please make sure you hit that follow, subscribe button on your platform of choice, or leave a rating and review on your platform of choice. Thank you very much. Catch you next week.